My mother was Mary Frances Redmond, and she was born in Keswick, Virginia, which is a little town about 6 miles outside of Charlottesville. Well, she was one of, eight children, and she was sent north to Massachusetts at a very young age, which was during that time, I understand it was sort of a normal thing for colored people, they were colored at that time, would send their children north to get an education because they were not able to get the benefits, a lot of benefits in the 1920s in the South. That she was sent when she was about 12 or 13 years old to live with a cousin in Boston. And she lived with them. This cousin was married to a man from Trinidad. And my mother lived with them while she went to school. And then those cousins sent her to Newburyport to work for a white family. I remember my mother saying that as young as she was, she had to do the cooking, she had to do the cleaning. And I remember her saying, I even had to answer the door. They didn't even, if somebody knocked on the door, I had to answer the door. She said, I had to do everything. And it was there, as I mentioned before, where she met my father and they fell in love and got married.
So she was doing this when she was probably only around 15 or so, wasn't she?
Yeah, right. She was very young. She didn't talk too much about, it was almost kind of a sad thing to reminisce about, I felt. And so if I ever was impudent enough to ask a question, she'd quickly change. If it was a personal question, she'd kind of change the subject. So she didn't really offer much information like that. I tried to get it, but she was had a very staunch demeanor about revealing things about her, what she went through. Was during the Depression and during those late 1920s, she was fortunate. It was looked on as being fortunate to be able to work. She always worked, and she always tried to always look her best. I was talking to a friend the other day who said, I remember your mother, and she always looked so nice. We didn't have much, we would do during the Depression. And, but she always, I remember she'd always put on, in those days, ladies wore rouge on their cheeks, and she'd have a little lipstick, and just to go to the store. And the store was only less than a 5-minute walk from our house, and but I always remember her always looking her best, even though she didn't have much.
And she worked all her life, it sounds, pretty much.
She always worked. During the early years after I was born and my sisters were born, she was a housewife until my father and her were divorced when I was 10 years old. And from that time on, he never, ever supported us. I don't think he ever remembered our birthdays. The only time in my life that I ever remember him giving me a gift was the year I graduated from high school. And he sent me, and I to this moment, I can't understand. He sent me a suitcase of graduation, and it was an ugly one, if I can say so. And I remember too, when I was a lot older, and she was getting achy from standing up all day long. And I asked her, I said, Mama, why didn't you ever go to court to get money to support us? And that was almost a very impudent question at that time to ask my mother. And she quickly said, well, your father knows where you are, and if he wants to send money, he'll send it. And that was the end of that. but she always worked because she had to.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember my mother not having a job. When the neighborhood, my friends, their mothers, they didn't work. They didn't get up in the
Really?
morning and wait for the streetcar and then the bus and then the train to get to work, you know. But my mother was out there by herself every morning going to work. After, you know, went to school and so forth. She was an excellent mother. You know, I think of her every single day. And there's never been a day in my life that I haven't thought about my mother, because she she was so proud. She wouldn't take welfare. She wouldn't. She just felt that as long as she could work, she would work. No matter what the work was, she was going to work. And I don't ever remember her not having a job. She worked in a laundry for over 30 years, and without any benefits. She worked 6.5 days, all those 30 years.
It's a famous laundry, isn't it?
Sonny's Laundry, yes,
Mhm.
yes. I remember when my mother died, Mr. Sonny was there at the funeral, and my mother was very respected by the Sonny family, the owner and his sons and the whole family. She always worked. She was never late. She never missed a day. My mother really set quite an example for us to be independent and not ask for anything, but to work for what we wanted. And I think about that every day of my life. She was a wonderful, perfect mother. And she had a lovely personality. And but she was a perfect mother in the sense of the word, as a mother should be. She set an example for us.